Hi everyone, happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining us and also happy Earth Day. Many of million marker detect and detox test users are hopeful, expecting, or new parents. As many new parents can attest that it's a really exhausting job, and mainly because babies are pretty unpredictable and it's hard to get them to have a good sleep schedule that all works for them and also work for the parents. That's why we're really glad to be joined by Heidi Lovens today. She's a certified sleep coach. Heidi specializes in creating healthy sleep patterns for children from birth to 5. She's also an advocate for Hugh Grace, of which I'm on the advisory board. Hugh Grace creates better than clean, hormone-safe products, and we know hormone plays an important role in sleep. So we're really excited to learn more from Heidi today. So it looks like let's hope. Here you are.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you
Nice.
so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's so nice, and I don't really get to meet many of our Instagram guests often, but I actually met you in person before, so I'm like super excited for
I
today.
know, I'm excited about it too. Yeah, we got to meet Sarah and Ben, the co-founders of Hugh and Grace. Actually, it was Sarah's parents' house where they hosted an event. So it's awesome to see you online, and I'm so glad I've already been able to meet you.
Right, right. So tell us a little bit about your background and what made you become
Yeah,
a certified sleep coach.
sure. Yeah. So I was a nanny. I had gone to college to become a teacher, and it just never really felt right for me. So I kind of just went into the career nanny route. My husband and I got married, and all of my friends were having kids. They had already had kids, and we were struggling with IVF and infertility. And my friends started coming to me asking for advice for their babies because they had known that I had worked with so many different families. They had known that I had done sleep training um, as a nanny, not as a sleep coach, even for so long. So they would come to me asking, how do I get my baby to sleep? What do I do? And I remember one day, one of my friends said, why aren't you doing this? Like, why don't you already have your own business? And I was like, oh, that's not a thing. Like, I didn't even know. And this was 7 years ago. So it was before it really became popular, I think, like it is now, where you might know somebody who's done sleep training, you might be looking at it, maybe you've already done it with your child. Um, and I got off the phone with my friend and I started Googling places to get trained to become a sleep coach. And I had signed up that night. Um, and I just kind of jumped in with it. And it was sort of an accidental career that I feel like was the best thing that could have ever happened. I love sleep. I love working with parents. I love just sort of like the detective work of figuring out, okay, why is this happening or what's going on here? And really it's such a rewarding job because at the end of 5 days or 10 days or a couple weeks of working with a family, they've gone from one extreme to the other of being sleep deprived. Maybe the mom is dealing with postpartum depression and the anxiety and the exhaustion behind not getting sleep, or how to create these healthy foundations for their baby is just making everything worse. And hearing from the mom that they're feeling so much better and they're feeling positive and good about their parenting now after just such a short period of time, it is really like the most rewarding thing ever for me.
It's also super powerful.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I've been called a sleep wizard before by many people. And I always laugh because it's not like wizardry. It's like science, and it's like tried and true and trusted methods. And it's also just kind of having the faith in it and having somebody as your cheerleader behind you, encouraging you and keeping you on track. And I kind of say it's like you could join 24-hour fitness and you could think about all the classes you want to go to. You can plan out what you're going to do. But like the accountability aspect of actually having somebody like a personal trainer there for you to meet you and that's expecting you every day and to tell you the right approaches for you specifically is sort of like what a sleep coach is for parents.
Yeah. So what kind of training does one need to go through to become a a sleep coach?
Yeah. So you don't have to have any training technically. Like you could just go out and start your own business and say, do X, Y, and Z. I personally have done a lot of training through different certifications. I do continuous education. Like every year I take more classes because everything is always evolving, right? Especially with babies and just staying up to date with products. Like there's always products on the market that are being recalled and making sure that you know what is safe for baby and what's not. So I've done several certifications where you go, you just do different classes, you do homework, you turn in essays, you have to read so many books, and then you have to have trial clients. So you have to have so many hours working with different clients as volunteers, and they give feedback on how you've done so that your teachers can really say, okay, they know what they're talking about or they don't.
Yeah. So how much does your life experience play into the recommendations that you make?
A lot. I was a sleep coach before I had my son. Like I said, we were going through IVF and that whole infertility journey. And at first it was mostly my friends, like, well, you don't have a kid yet, so you'll see what it's like when you have a baby of your own. You'll see how hard this is. And like, it always hurt my feelings. Like, well, I still can know what I'm talking about, but okay, we'll see. And when I had my son, I realized I could relate to the parents on a different level of saying, okay, well, I personally have done this and I've tried it and I know it works versus I've had clients who have done this and tried it and it works. And I don't think I do anything differently. I think my background and I think my approach is exactly the same. I think my methods are exactly the same. I've always focused on more gentle techniques rather than like a full-on fervor, cry it out type approach. And now I can just say to parents, I personally would never be able to use that method for my child, so I'm never going to tell you that you should use it either. And as far as products, I mean, I would never recommend or say to anybody to try a baby product that I haven't used. That was something that was really important to me. I've even been in different groups where I've tested baby products and written blogs about it and shared them with my audience. And it's really important that I've tried it out with my son or firsthand with clients if I'm working with them in person.
They're lucky to be working with you.
Thank you.
So day one of bringing a kid home is like really scary experience for parents. So what
Yeah.
are some tips for getting this bedroom baby ready to sleep?
Yeah. You know, I wish it started even before that. I mean, it can with preparing the nursery, but I always say, like, I wish the hospital would send parents home with just like even one page. Like, it's not a baby manual, but maybe just a cheat sheet of sleep so that a parent can know like what they're doing and how long their infant should be awake for. Like they tell you in the hospital, okay, make sure your baby eats every 2 to 3 hours, right? Or if the baby hasn't had a soiled diaper by this day, come back or call us, right? They give you things like that. They don't tell you anything about sleep. And a lot of that is like pediatricians aren't necessarily trained in sleep. Like they take a very short course on it and that's it. And that's not their job, right? So it would be so nice if parents could know about it ahead of time. So, do your research, find out like the awake windows for a newborn are really short and maybe just look into that so you can be prepared for how often your baby really is going to need to sleep and how often they are going to need to eat along with that before you even think about the nursery, right? But then as far as where the baby sleeps is so important that I'm not against co-sleeping, but for me, in my background, in my training, that's not what I offer. I will like be fully behind room sharing, especially because that's what's recommended for at least the first 6 months to a year. That's what I chose to do too for my son. So I love working with families who are still following that. Maybe their baby's 6 months old and they still want a room share and sleep train, like get the sleep they want. And I love clients like that. But really getting their sleep space important. So whether that's a bassinet for them or even a pack and play in the parents' room, or it's their own crib with a really safe mattress. Making sure, there's such cute things out there right now, like all the cute little bumpers that match the nursery decor and things like that, but they're not safe. So really making sure that you're finding out what is safe to have in the crib with the baby, and how you should dress them, and how to just keep them safe while they're sleeping, is huge. And that's a big one. Like for me, a lot of my clients will buy this like beautiful Pottery Barn crib that's like $1,000, and then they're like, oh, we're out of our budget, we're just gonna slap this cheap little mattress on, or we're gonna get a used mattress and throw it in there. And they're not really thinking like this is an environment where baby's gonna spend a lot of their time, most of their time sleeping, hopefully a lot of their time in the crib, and you want that mattress to be really safe for them. You want it to be organic. You want it to be breathable. There's great ones on the market now. One that I use for my son called Newton, that like you can just hose off. You don't have to have a waterproof cover over it. So it's totally breathable. You can put your face actually onto it and breathe through the mattress. And just things like that are non-toxic that you're putting your baby on to sleep, I think is a really important place to start.
Yeah, we say it really often because the younger you get exposed to these toxic chemicals, the potential more detrimental impact it could have on the baby. I mean, a baby is rapidly growing kid.
Yeah.
So it's like extremely, extremely important.
Right. And just so sensitive, right? Their little bodies are so sensitive to everything. And even my son has eczema, and I wonder like, oh my gosh, what was it that he was exposed to right on that maybe is triggering this even more? And just thinking about their tiny bodies being, on a mattress full of toxic chemicals. So it makes sense that the earlier you're exposed to it, the more damage it can do.
Yeah. Are there other recommendations you would make for safe sleep besides, mattress, crib, products?
Yeah. So just not using all the other products. I know a lot have been recalled, but really, not just looking at cute pictures that somebody posts on Instagram or social media, and looking at a product and thinking, oh, okay, my baby could sleep in that too. Their baby's sleeping in it. A lot of these products are meant more for like a parent supervision, which makes no sense at all because you're not going to like put your baby to sleep in something and sit there and stare at them the whole time or be awake the whole time, right? Following recommendations like not just pulling out the car seat carrier out of the car and putting it down on the floor when you get home to get a little more sleep, or unbuckling them in the car seat if they're still sleeping. Like there's a lot of little things like that little things on the parents' part that they can do to keep them safe in a really big way. So just always making sure, no matter where your baby's sleeping, even if you're all exhausted and overtired, that you're making sure that the safety of how they're sleeping and where is really number one.
Yeah. So what are some tips for getting the baby to go to sleep?
Yeah. So especially as a newborn, like I kind of hit on before, newborns have such a short awake window. So, even in the hospital or the day you take them home, it can be anywhere from 40 minutes to 90 minutes. So, the first couple months of their life. So a lot of people might think, okay, if I keep them awake all day long and I give them all these great feeds, then they're going to sleep great at night. But it sort of backfires on you. An overtired baby has a harder time calming and settling, nursing or bottle feeding. They have a harder time falling asleep and staying asleep, which you would, for me, I would think the more tired I am, the harder I'm going to sleep, the more I'm going to sleep. But for a baby, it doesn't happen. So really making sure that you're following those awake windows so that they can fall asleep easily. And also making sure that you've met all of your baby's needs. So have they been fed? Do they have a clean diaper? Are they comfortable? Are they a good temperature? Making sure that baby's not overheated when you're trying to put them down or, in a hot room. And then, your expectations too, of knowing that a newborn isn't probably going to like take these wonderful naps right off the bat, or they're not going to sleep through the night, or they might wake up every single 30-40 minute sleep cycle, and understanding that's okay and that's normal, instead of being stressed about it all the time, I think is super helpful for new parents. And contact naps, right? Especially those first 3 months, hold your baby, snuggle with your baby, put them in a carrier, go for a walk outside and get some fresh air. All of those things are okay and great, you know, for the bonding and for your baby to get rest. It doesn't have to be in the crib every single nap from day one. And just sort of setting those foundations early on can be really helpful to, you know, to get your baby to sleep, sort of like fall into a good routine, set those expectations so that when it is time to sleep train, or when it is time that your baby can be sleeping better, you sort of know what to do and you're not overly stressed about it.
Yeah, you mentioned that make sure the baby's well fed before,
Yeah.
right? So how long before they go to sleep that should the parents be feeding the baby or stop feeding the baby?
Or stop feeding the baby. So, I mean, it really varies. As children get older, you definitely don't want to be feeding them a meal, you know, like a toddler. You don't want to give them dinner 20 minutes before bedtime, right? Because their body needs to digest it. They might have to go to the bathroom. But newborns, little babies, of course, you can feed them up until the time they're falling asleep. I always tell my clients, because, you know, some parents come to this like, do I have to stop feeding them to sleep? And the answer more so than yes is, or more so than not is yes. Like, just so that you're creating that healthy sleep foundation at bedtime. Because what can happen is your baby will get used to always needing a bottle or to be nursed to fed to sleep. And then as they wake up through the night, whether they're hungry or not, they may start expecting that way to go back to sleep again. But it also isn't always the case. Like, I nursed my son for a very long time and I nursed him to sleep almost every night of his life. But what I did after is I would put him in his sleep sack, and then I would turn on the sound machine and make, you know, a tiny little noise or something to slightly wake him. And for him, it was okay. It never became a problem. And I tell my clients that too. Like, I always am willing to try, like, well, let's keep doing some of the things that you're doing. Or if that's something that's really important to you to still have that time nursing to sleep, then let's work on it. And we only have to change it if it's still a problem or if it becomes a problem, right? So for babies, like newborns, like, you want to fill them up. You want to make sure that they're super fed so that you can then go lay down and sleep and you can get a good amount of sleep. I also recommend something called a dream feed for the first couple of months too, where, you know, maybe your baby's last technical feed of the day is around 7 or 8, but you and your family are still awake for a while. Maybe you're having dinner, getting a shower in, or sitting on the couch, right? And then right before you go to bed, you feed your baby again, sort of like almost slightly wake them up, dream feed, like they're half awake, half asleep kind of thing. You can change their diaper to get them a little bit more awake. You give them a full feed, offer that, burp them, hold them upright for a while if needed, and then you put them back to sleep. And then you really get a good chunk of sleep while they're sleeping too. So, you know, in those cases, you want to feed them up until sleep time. But like I said, that does change as they get older.
I love this dream feed concept.
It doesn't work for adults. Don't anybody try that.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot about napping. So how often should a baby nap?
Yeah. So, you know, for newborns, it can vary. They can take lots and lots of 20, 30, 40-minute naps throughout the day, as long as they're spaced out in those shorter periods. Every time they wake up, you kind of start counting the clock again. And as they get older, it's much bigger awake windows. Like, if a child is then on one nap of the day, you really want to space it out more evenly, like 4.5 to 6 hours of awake time before you offer a nap, and then bedtime. So sort of just like with age, as they get older, that gap gets bigger because they have more energy to burn, and they have more time that they need to practice activities and milestones or get outside and run that energy out, versus a newborn. Maybe it's just the energy of having a poopy diaper and a full feed and looking at mom and dad in the eyes for 5 minutes, and they're exhausted, right? So it really just does vary depending on that age.
So in practice, how do you alter these nap schedules? based on their
In,
age?
yeah, in practice, it's just based on their age. So as they hit different age brackets, they sort of is that time that you tend to see that they'll drop a nap and have slightly longer awake windows. It varies, of course, from baby to baby. You'll start to notice usually it's that last nap of the day that maybe baby is struggling to actually fall asleep, or if they do fall asleep, it's taking them a really long time. And then when they do get that sleep, then it interferes with bedtime. And maybe it makes bedtime harder for them to fall asleep. It takes them longer. And so there's definitely cues that you can see. It's usually pretty obvious, like something that had been working for a good amount of time is no longer working. And then you look at their age and say, oh, okay, that makes sense why they need a little bit more awake time right now. It could also show up in the form of nighttime wake up. So maybe you have a baby who's been sleeping through the night with or without sleep training, or sleeping really well, and now all of a sudden they're waking up in the middle of the night for a full wake window of, an hour or two or three, and you can't figure out why. It could be because they're getting too much daytime sleep, too many naps. So really looking at the full picture, not just naps, but it can interfere with the nighttime sleep too.
Right. So if they missed like a regular nap time, what do you do?
Oh my gosh, if they miss a nap, it's the end of the world. No, again, it just depends. It depends on their age again too. So if you have a baby that's on multiple naps during the day, maybe it means that you just offer that next nap a half an hour earlier so that they can kind of make up for it. If it's a child that is just on one nap a day, maybe that means putting them to bed a full hour earlier so that they can make up that sleep at night. Especially with older children, you really want to offer them that sleep that they can make up at night, because, if you have a child that normally goes to bed, say at 7 o'clock at night and sleeps until 6 o'clock in the morning, what happens is if you still put them to bed at 7, they're overtired. It might take them longer to fall asleep, and then they lose even more overall sleep. But what can happen is if you put them to bed earlier and you stay ahead of that, they can just make up that sleep overnight. So they're getting more restorative sleep. And it doesn't mean they're going to wake up an hour earlier in the morning. It usually encourages them to sleep till their normal wake up time anyways. So, when in doubt, I always say an earlier bedtime is usually that way to go at any age, really.
So if your baby wants to sleep longer than usual, would that like mess things up later? Well, I guess parents just have to, depending on their schedule, to adjust this early
Yeah.
bedtime or later bedtime.
Yeah, exactly. Or, for example, my son's 4.5 now, and he goes to preschool a couple days a week, and he's in the classroom. It's the last classroom where they still offer rest or nap times. And the days that he naps there at school, he will not fall asleep until 9 o'clock at night, even if he only naps for 20 minutes. And what happens is I think they have from like 1 to 2:30, right, is where they put them down, and he'll fall asleep from like 2 to 2:30 or like 2:15 to 2:30, and he still will not go to sleep until 9 o'clock at night, because it gives him enough of that rest to sort of trick his body into thinking like, oh, I got this full amount of sleep. I got this great nap today. I don't need to go to bed until later. And he'll lay in bed. He's really good at it. He'll call us a million times. He'll get up and use every excuse, but we're really we're working against his body not being ready to sleep. So generally on those days where I know he slept, we'll have more activity outside after school. We'll run him hard. Going outside as the sun's going down, that sunset time can be a really good cue to get outside. The colors in the sky, everything sort of signals your body okay, the day is starting to close down, and just get your body into gear for that. So I try to do everything I can. I offer him a bath those nights. But it can be really hard if your child is napping later, or if they're old enough that they don't really need it and they slip in on accident a little nap, or if you do have a child that's still taking multiple naps and you let them nap way later into the day, or they're just having too much daytime sleep. I look at their sleep in a 24-hour cycle. So it's not just like the daytime sleep and the nighttime sleep, but it's all of it together. So if my son's going to sleep 12 hours in a 24-hour period and he gets an hour of that during the day, he's going to lose an hour of that at night, right? Because it's the whole total. And oftentimes same, with maybe not newborns, but as they, a couple months old, it starts to change where if they're getting all of that sleep. And I guess, yes, with newborns actually, because they can have that day and night confusion, but really, making sure that you're looking at the daytime too.
Wow. You're a wealth of
It's a
knowledge.
lot of information.
It's a lot of information. I'm like, wow, you parents, it's a hard job.
It is.
Yeah.
And then not just sleep, but then you have to think about,
Yeah.
feeding them and bathing them and cutting their little baby fingernails and getting out of the house and then taking care of yourself. And then you throw in like all the toxic chemicals that are all around us. And it's just like, there's always something to be worried about as a parent and something that you're thinking about nonstop, not just for you, but for these other little humans now too.
Right. So tell us, like, what does a consultation with you look like?
Yeah, so I offer free consultations. I always want to talk to the parents I'm working with first, make sure that we're the right fit, make sure that their sleep goals and their sleep expectations align with what's realistic and align with the approaches that I take and that I use. Sometimes a parent will call me and what they want isn't something that I can offer them, right? Like they might want an 8 to 8 schedule, but their baby is a natural early riser that cannot sleep past 6 or 6:30. And I'll tell them that. I'll say, I think you could get this, more sleep. I think you could get them sleeping through the night, but I don't know that we can set this time or that time for them. Or, if somebody comes to me with a 3-month-old and, they want to wean their nighttime feeds, I'll say, age appropriately, that's not realistic. I like to wait until 4, 5, 6 months before getting rid of any of those feeds, making sure that the pediatrician is involved and they're on board. So a consultation really looks like talking about goals, talking about their child, talking about their unique family life, and really putting that all into consideration. And then, answering any questions that the parent might have specifically or kind of broad questions. And then from there, they decide if they want to work with me or not. And then if they do, they purchase a package and it has a more formal intake form that they give me, all the information about their baby so that I can create a custom plan for them.
Wow. So you also have a sleep shop. Tell us about that.
Well, so the sleep shop is just like what I offer. So it's anything from a 30-minute or 60-minute phone call. So if it's a parent, sometimes it's a client I worked with before and they just have a couple of questions that they want to ask me. Sometimes it's a client I worked with before that now is on baby number 2 or 3. And so they generally know what they're doing, but they just kind of want to get clarification or get like somebody else's approval, right? I did a lot of phone calls the past 2 years with COVID, right? Like a lot of doctor's appointments you could only do virtually, or a lot of baby well checks, like they just weren't having them because they only wanted to save room for people who really had to come in, right? So I had a lot of parents that were like, well, I didn't get to get in with my pediatrician for a well check, and these were all questions I wanted to talk about with sleep or get guidance, or moms weren't going to mom groups anymore in person where they could just like complain about sleep or talk about just anything, right? And so a lot of parents who just want to talk something through is really big for those phone calls. And then I offer a mini sleep program that's 5 days long or a full one for 10 days. So just depending on how much support you need, or realistically, if I say, I think you can probably work through this in 5 days, or at least you'll get off to a really great start and then you can take it from there. Or a parent that's like, no, I need you from A to Z all the way. Like, let's do a full plan. And those, like my plans all consist of working through that intake form, creating a custom sleep plan for them, creating their schedule for their baby, even if they want me to like write down the feeding times that they want me to suggest, to reviewing that in a 45-minute or an hour-long phone call, and then working through that. So we have a Google Doc that we write in every day for the baby's logs. They have my cell phone number, so they're texting me throughout the day. We have scheduled phone calls. Oftentimes, like a question that a parent might think is just like the worst thing in the world is going on. We might just hop on the phone and I say, oh no, like let's just change this, or let's adjust this time. And then it all falls into place just hopping on a quick call, right? So that's what I love, is that I can offer this more customized approach for my clients. And it's not as cookie cutter, right? There's only so many sleep methods out there, and you can kind of mold them and change them and put them together. And there are certain awake windows for each age, and you know that. But often it's the family dynamic. It's something that like the mom is really stressed every time she goes into the room to check on the baby. And so just having somebody from the outside looking in that can give some helpful tips is, I think, just invaluable to parents. And then I do have some in-person that I'll do locally. I'm in the Bay Area. So if it's a family close by that really wants me either to come in person and do these consultations with them, or if they want me to just do the first couple days of sleep training when they stand back because they can't or they don't want to be the ones to jump into it, or often like they might have an overnight nanny, or the parents are shift work on shifts and they're not there at bedtime. So they want me to walk the nanny or somebody else, the grandma involved, help walk them through the process. So I offer that as well.
Wow. It's so comprehensive and it's so useful. Well, you know that we at Million Marker, we test for toxic chemicals. And then you mentioned a lot of with the baby's crib and room, it's really important. And then we know you're like an advocate for Hugh and Grace. So tell us like what made you become an advocate for Hugh and Grace?
Well, and I love that I don't know if it was like in our initial emails or something on Million Marker that you were talking about how endocrine disruptors can affect your sleep. And it's something that I didn't even know until recently. So like, I want to say that I went into Hugh and Grace and becoming an advocate because I knew about all of this stuff ahead of time, and that's why I chose them. But I didn't really know a lot about it. I had, like I said, going through IVF. I knew on the walls in the doctor's office it said, please don't wear any perfume. And my doctor would say, don't put anything with a lot of fragrance on your day of transfer, or for this or that. And I never really knew why, right? I just figured, okay, it upsets something. It doesn't work with something, or maybe there's people in here who feel nauseous and they don't want to smell it, right? Like that's how naive I was 7 years ago that I didn't know that. And then going through that process and going through IVF, I started to look at it more. And I took out our cable out of our room because I was just like following different people and I was like, oh, is the cable box like causing things? And I started shopping more organic, and I started to make little changes. And then after I had my son, I started to make bigger changes, like the crib mattress and the products I was using in our house to just clean, right? Like I went from using who knows what on the floor to using like white vinegar and an essential oil that I love and trust to clean our floors instead, because I knew my son was going to be crawling and walking and eating the food off the ground, and that scared me. And so when a really good friend of mine came to me and shared Hugh and Grace and what they're all about, and shared that it was a company not only to have skincare and have these products, but that wanted to educate their advocates, that wanted to educate their customers, and really anybody who wanted to know about endocrine disruptors and toxic chemicals and just daily things in our life that disrupt our body, our hormones, our health. And at the time, it was just I just jumped in, right? I hadn't even tried the products. I trusted my friend. I watched a video about Sarah and Ben and their story, and I think the first year of being an advocate, I cried every single time I heard them talk about their story of infertility and the story of their family just jumping in to help them, and how they wanted to give back, and how this company was how they were going to give back. And and I love it. I love their products. I love them. I love the people that they've introduced me to. And I just, they're products that make me feel better about myself, that make me feel better about being a mom and having in our home. And they're products that have really helped my son even with eczema. And it's a product I use on myself and him every single day and just feel really good about. And ever since joining them, I understand more. Like even from following you, like I've made changes. Our Tupperware used to be plastic, and I invested in all glass Tupperware to store our foods, and little changes like that I know over time, significantly making small changes really do add up. So that's one thing about Hugh and Grace is, like instead of using all this crazy hair products I used to use on my hair, I just use my body oil. I put it on my hands and I kind of rub it through my hair to make my hair shiny and feel good. And just being able to have those simple little changes goes a really long way.
That's so wonderful to hear. So what's your favorite product?
It's the night serum. It's totally a night serum. It is, and the smell of it, I feel like prepares me for bedtime. It's, when we talk about babies and sleep and routine and, putting a new diaper on them, maybe giving them a massage or something before bed and then putting their jammies on, turning on that sound machine and putting them to bed. For me, like the night serum is all of that. I can be in my makeup, coming home from the gym, like crazy day. I wash my face, I put my night serum on, and I get into bed, and I just feel like that was my routine. And I love the way it makes my face feel. My husband loves it. He loves it when I put it on him at night too. And if I had to get rid of all the other products and only have one, it would 100% be the night serum.
That's also my pick.
Yeah, it's good.
So thank you so much for joining us. This is
Yeah.
like such good information. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. So be sure to follow Heidi at Everyday Lovens. And then you can also set up a consultation with Heidi by clicking our LinkedIn bio. And then you can also shop Hugh and Grace product by clicking our LinkedIn bio as well. So thank you so much.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.